All right, Rob.
Right, Scott.
You have a map.
I do have a map, yeah.
We've got to find some way to link this to Amazon and get some money. Because you bought it from Amazon, didn't you?
Yeah.
You bought them out. You got... Basically, it's too big to the extent you can't see all of it at once.
No, you can't. Because the corridor's quite small as well.
I was going to say, there's... As you walk in to Rob's flat, on the wall to your right is a map that is almost obnoxious in its size. It's a massive map of... You can see detail in countries I have never even thought.
Well, on the size system, it was listed under size huge. And it was the biggest size they had.
It's basically... It could cover a wall.
It does cover a wall, yeah.
It does cover your wall, yeah.
That was the idea when I got it.
And one time I was at yours, and you were just stood there looking at it. And I wondered what you were doing, and it turned out you were literally just looking at your map.
Yeah. That's why I got it. I like maps.
So there's going to be a link in the thing to the exact same map, so you can also get your own huge map.
Yeah.
But essentially, we've decided to pick a country from Rob's map and talk about it and see what... Both have a little look into it and see what we find interesting about it. So, Hong Kong.
Yeah, so Hong Kong, Scott.
Did you watch the flag changeover from the UK to Hong Kong?
No, I haven't.
So-
Enlighten me on that.
So there was a whole ceremony. Prince Charles was there. Tony Blair was there. They have these guys. There's like a whole military thing, whole military scene with people who stamp way too much when they walk. And you just see Prince Charles's face as he's seeing the UK flag gets like pulled down and like dropped almost to the point it's touching the floor. It's removed, and then China's flag goes on. You just see him. He has a look at one point where he's just like, "That's another one gone." Like it's just, yeah. It was just one of those things. And then you've got, do you know they call the
Wait, so it was the actual Chinese flag, not the Hong Kong
it
flag?
was the Chinese flag. It started with the UK flag and the Hong Kong flag in the UK version. Those two both came down, and the Chinese one went up, and then the new current Hong Kong flag went up. And yeah, you could just see it in Prince Charles's face, where he's just like, "Damn it."
Another territory lost.
Have you seen the old Hong Kong flag?
The old one, I have seen it. I'm just going to get it up now for reference.
I'll put it in the show notes. But essentially, it's hideous.
As most of them are, like those old,
The old Empire flags.
yeah, most of them are, kind of.
So I was actually, like, when I was watching Prince Charles, he looked sad, but I was happy that flag was coming down. Even if China's was then going up.
Yeah, as long as it got a better design, innit?
Yeah. We didn't deserve Hong Kong. Look at the flag we made for it.
And if we cared, we would have made a better flag. So it's the blue one with like a coat of arms. So essentially it's just a navy blue flag with the UK flag in the top left-hand corner, and it has like a white circle with it looks like a coat of arms.
Alright, hang on.
It's a
I want
lion
to
and a
time
dragon.
how long it takes you to describe everything that's in that little white circle.
In the little what looks like a coat of arms. Right. There we go, I've got it. So it's the lion on one half on the left-hand side, which I'm presuming is representative of England, and there's a dragon on the right-hand side, which presume represents China, Hong Kong. There's like a lion in the middle, and he's wearing a crown, and he's got like a ball in his hand. Looks like a Dragon Ball.
It looks like a dragon ball. There's a meaning behind that ball.
And then Chrome has stopped working. Awesome.
There's so much on that flag, it broke Chrome.
There's a shield with two boats on it. What looks like water underneath, and then it has Hong Kong written on the banner with white, blue stripes.
So the reason why there's that little
There's slightly more on the flag as well that I'm sure I have missed in that explanation, but you know.
yeah, but there'll be a link in the thing. But the reason why there's the little white circle that is called in like a little ball, it's a pearl, because Hong Kong is the Pearl of the Orient.
Well, yeah, it's on the Pearl River, isn't it?
I don't know, but that's
Yeah.
what it's apparently.
It's on the Pearl River.
I don't know.
So that makes sense.
But I saw a thing that said its nickname was the Pearl of the Orient, which made me think, what actually does Orient mean? Because it sounds vaguely racist.
Hey, this is a geography podcast, not a linguistics podcast. We'll be here all day.
But Orient means just from the east, and Occident means from the west. So we're Occidental and they're Oriental.
So we're Occidental.
We're Occidental. How amazing is that? But
I've never heard of that before.
yeah, I know that this is a learning experience for all.
Is that politically correct to say Occidental? To refer to British people?
I mean, are you offended?
No.
Good.
We'll go with that then.
Occidental. But it just sounded a bit too much like accidental, like we were the mistake. The entire Western Hemisphere.
I was just thinking about it's got dental in it and everyone takes the piss out of our teeth.
Well, I also found out, right, it's law that the Hong Kong flag may only be displayed with the Chinese flag and subordinate to the Chinese flag. So it has to be, it was in every part of that presentation, the Hong Kong flag was always slightly smaller. Yeah. It's that type of thing of being like, we have to have the biggest flag. It's the most Chinese ceremony ever. Which I feel like we're going to be a bit anti-Chinese in this. But it's like, not China the people or the country, but the Chinese Communist Party.
The current government in China, yeah.
They're the dicks.
They definitely are if you're from Hong Kong.
Exactly. Definitely.
As Hong Kong is a special administration region.
Yeah.
Hence why it has the smaller flag and China's displayed above it because it is supposed to be it is a part of China and they're subservient to them.
It's one country, two systems, isn't it?
One country, two systems, yes.
Because they have different passport control, different governments, but the same army. It's like C.G.B. Gray says, it's the most country-like country that's not a country. And,
yeah, pretty much.
Vatican City is the most city-like country that's not a city.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It has UN observer state status, so it's not like all the other countries.
Doesn't have its own Olympics team.
No, unlike Hong Kong, who does
Hong Kong did have its own Olympics team, yes!
They do.
I knew we'd have some of the same research.
And they did compete at the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games.
Did they?
Yes, alongside China, so as their own separate team. Thing is though, you for stuff like the Olympics now, it's about like generally country size matters, like the size of the country does come into it.
Well, yeah, because it's literally just chance who has the best athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain extent, like the training programs and the amount of money they put into sports makes the difference. But at the end of the day, America's a massive goddamn country, so they're gonna have more athletes that just naturally go up. They've got more population, more like chance.
Yeah, hence why US tend to get a lot of the gold medals.
Yeah, I do remember when I think we had the Olympics here, and we did like ridiculously well comparatively. It's always China on top, isn't it?
It's usually US, Russia, China.
Yeah.
And then UK is usually in that mix. And
Funny
then
how they're the biggest countries in the world. Are they?
China is the biggest, like population wise. Then it'd be India.
I mean, like,
Then
of course, India.
And then then I think it's the US, just over 300 million, about 310 million in US. Goes down for now.
Versus our like 60, isn't it? We've got like 67 or something.
Yeah, I think Russia has over 100 million, but it just outperforms at the Olympics due to various reasons. The reasons they couldn't compete at the last Olympics.
Oh yeah, because they had the whole the cheating scandal, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, steroid scandal.
Did you see about when you were looking this up? I thought like Edinburgh was like heavily, like really highly populated. By I saw a thing about Hong Kong being the most populated place, like per square inch. They've got more people per square inch, per square meter.
Tiny little Smurf people per square inch. No, per square meter, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're the most built up place. The sort of weirder part of that is that they have rented burial plots. So if you get buried in Hong Kong, you only get to be buried for 6 years before they dig you back up and cremate you, because there's not enough graveyards in Hong Kong for you to stay under forever.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hong Kong is a heavily densely populated area. There are various areas in India which are more densely populated. But one of the most densely populated regions ever in all of history was within Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And that's the Kowloon Walled City.
Yeah.
You ever heard of this?
Oh, that's the bit that was the walled city was where there was no law. Am I right?
Yeah, it's often called either the City of Darkness or the City of Anarchy,
Yeah.
which was the most heavily densely populated city. There was about, if you scale the population density to the same as it is in New York, there'd be 1.9 million people per square kilometre.
Per kilometre?
Yeah, if you adjust it, if you adjust the population density to the same as it is in New York.
But the triads, isn't that like the Chinese version of the mafia?
Yeah.
They were basically the law there.
One has, they kind of regulated everything to an extent, as much as they would. They even so they would be kind of like the enforcers of like any sort of rule. There wasn't any real rules there, but they would even like do things like pay for like almost like firemen to put out fires, because you can imagine that many people, like 50,000 people living in such a small area, in an area roughly the same size as 4 football fields.
50,000 people.
Yeah,
But like, that's ridiculous.
living in an
It's
area.
too many people.
Living in an area that sort of
'Cause
size.
they have, I remember I saw a picture of it and it was like giant white walls. So it was literally just inside the wall, there is no law.
It's just like basically just like a little city.
A city in a city.
Well, it's basically just like a little city. It was originally was like a fort, like a old like military fort, which refugees went to stay in, and then they decided they were never going to leave, and it just built up over time, and more people came now because like where it's so free and from all rules and stuff, you can do whatever you want. Like more people found that more like appealing to an extent, or from various walks of life would go there. Like
that's so weird because like you. In the same place, you have the influence of China, one of the most strict, like viciously, almost tyrannical, like government, and then you also have in the same place a lawless anarchy. That's mad.
I mean, you did. It got demolished
Well,
in
yeah.
1994 by the British.
Oh really? See, this is the other thing about doing this, like talking about countries around the world.
Yeah, as Britain will go up quite a lot.
Britain's gonna come up quite a lot, and not in a good way.
Yeah, why was this place kind of a mess? The British. But going back to the actual, what we was talking about the triads having like a lot of the influence within the Kowloon Walled City and paying firemen out. They even gave old people their pensions and stuff and paid out for them.
What?
It was crazy.
Aren't they like the mafia?
Kinda, yeah.
They're essentially the Chinese version of the mafia, and they're paying people's pensions.
Well, yeah, you got old people like in the city that need help and that.
That's ridiculous. Oh, I guess because like, it was basically they were then in control of like keeping everyone alive as much as they were in control of like making sure no laws came in.
Well, there wasn't making sure no laws came in. It was just a lawless area,
Yeah.
which is obviously a good place to operate. The entire like bottom floor was filled with like the street levels was filled with like unlicensed doctors and dentists and that, because you could just operate like out of your house basically, just be like, do you want today? I'm going to be a doctor. Open up the front door, but like, I'm just doing that bit of dentistry today.
Jesus.
You can just have some random guy working on your teeth and that. They had their own postal system within the
Really?
blocks, yeah.
So did they have like actual like jobs that you got paid for?
Kinda. Like I say, you do just kind of pull up the front door and be like, yeah, I'm selling burgers today. I mean, probably you wouldn't after the fiasco you had today with your burgers, but smoking out the entire flat, but...
I don't understand how that happened. Like, it's literally like, it's never, whenever I've cooked before, I've like aired it out a little bit halfway through and like flipped over the burgers. I think it's because you arrived. I'm blaming you. You arrived 15 minutes earlier when I would have normally flipped the burgers over and cleared the smoke out. It's your fault.
Just to tell you what Scott is referencing is the fact when I entered the flat probably about an hour ago, it was completely smoked out with the fire alarms going off like mental, with just burger smoke pluming out the windows.
I cooked burgers and it didn't work.
Cooked two
This is
burgers.
going to be so annoying because
Cooked two burgers.
if Annabelle hears this, she's going to like, ha, I knew you can cook. But,
Yeah, they did have, like I say, they did have a postal system where postmen would have to try and navigate like the incredibly like complex layout of the area.
oh yeah, because I guess it's like a fort. Or like,
Well, it's not a fort. It wasn't a fort at that time. It was just like buildings built upon each other, because where they only had like such a small area to build upon, they started to build up.
yeah.
So most things came to about 14 stories tall. Most of the buildings. That was the max you could go to, because otherwise planes would crash into them because it was right next to the airport.
That's the weirdest thing. I thought, like, I've seen like pictures of skyscrapers in Hong Kong that have giant holes in the middle because of feng shui. Is to let dragons come through.
Well, yeah, they do believe in feng shui architecture. Just like there'll be lots of buildings there that won't have a fourth floor. You don't get a fourth floor usually in Chinese buildings, because it's the character for floors similar to the character of the death. So it's bad luck to have a floor like that. But yeah, these postmen would operate through all these different streets and that, and it'd be with lots of twists and turns and that. They actually built a system of like rampways and makeshift like landing ways, so people don't actually have to touch the bottom floor. Because as you can imagine, the bottom floor was not very nice there, with like waste and sewage just being chucked down there and everything. So they'd navigate through tiny little alleyways, which usually were like between 3 and 6 foot wide. These tiny little alleyways they had to get through, but yeah. And we go up and down all across. There was not. Someone tried to map it out. It took them like 10 years, but
What?
so it wasn't really much of like a system of how things worked. It was just the postman knew how to do it from doing it for a long time.
Could you imagine your first day there?
Well, you would quit, wouldn't you? And go like, "That's it. I'm gonna go be a dentist now."
Yeah, just go to a dentist. That's easier.
No, it's easier.
I'll go cut someone's liver out. That's easier than getting to know this place. But it's like, what did you do on your first? Did they have addresses then? They must have had addresses of like, this is, or there's no way 50,000 people knew each other's names. So there must have been like some sort of a actual address that people had.
Well, they did have addresses. And there was like a numbering system, but it didn't really make much sense. You just kind of knew that, like, oh, I know where those numbers are. They're like on the 13th floor of the complex on the east side or something. But yeah, I mean, people did come and go. Like, you would go there for like a day out. You'd be like, let's go to the Kowloon Walled City.
Really?
Yeah, you would leave like the main city of Hong Kong and be like,
go into an internal city.
Well, Kowloon's like an area just outside of like the island of what you would call Hong Kong. Right. Kowloon's like a separate little extra region which was added to the administration region of Hong Kong later on, after the first inception of it.
So that's the other thing, because I thought that Hong Kong was just like a small island, but it's like 200 like little islands that are all part of the same region.
Yeah.
And then there's just one big island in the middle of that. Is that right?
I mean, there is like a larger main island, but there are various different little islands all around and off the edges and stuff like that.
I saw a tourist video where it's like, Hong Kong is where East meets West. So it's got all of like the democracy of like England and Britain and all of our sort of like political, not all of our political system, but our sort of like, wasn't that part of the thing, is that they had to be democratic or capitalist for the first 50 years, then Hong Kong can do what they want. Was that right?
Oh, when
it turned over, when it
left British control. No, basically to try and make the transition from the system it had been using so far to being part of China more smooth, they decided to go, we'll have a 50-year period of special administration region before becoming part of China. That's why it's one country, two systems, isn't it?
Yeah.
So eventually it will become part of China. They're supposed to be left alone for the first 50 years, basically.
They haven't been. Spoiler alert to any time travellers. Yeah, we're both on the same, like, we're both on the same page. the Chinese Communist Party aren't the best in this situation with essentially violence.
Yes.
Is not great.
We both think that the Hong Kong people are having their freedoms revoked. We think the protesters...
Well, basically, we're with the protesters, if you
Yes.
haven't guessed.
Yes.
But it's interesting because, like...
And we very much urge everyone to go and research the protests and see what's happening. There's loads of information out there on it.
We'll put a couple of links in the thing about, like, different charities to go to and everything.
So anyway, yeah, back to the Kowloon Walled City, as it were. As you said, he was like, how could in a place like China have, like, a city that is, like, so lawless, basically? And obviously that was because that was during the British rule over Hong Kong. And during that time, the British made a couple attempts to try, like, stop it, but they was always met with, like, fierce resistance. And to be honest, there wasn't much, like, need for them to take it down. It only became that when they was transferring power back to China of Hong Kong, they decided, well, to make it, like, not such a blight on, like, the empire, as it were, having, like, a city so lawless, they decided they would have to take it down, which they did in 1994. And it was mainly peaceful. People, like, obviously there was people that refused to, but for the most part, people just, like, police went in, removed people from the buildings, took them down, took them out, and then if there's a few stragglers who refused to leave, but in the end, on the last day, all police came in, took them all out, and it was pretty much fine from there, and it was demolished.
Really?
They did then have a camp set up for them, as they were just lost their homes, and as you can imagine, what they tried to start doing when the camp was the City V2, which quickly got shut down.
I just want to be like, there's just like, the British police go home one night and they come back and there's like a 4-foot wall around the entire thing. Just like, no, that's nothing to do with us. We didn't do that. Oh,
We're not doing another city.
no.
But yeah, it was demolished, and then it's now basically just like a giant park.
Is
sort of
it?
thing. Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, it's 4 football fields large, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah, roughly it was, and buildings reaching up to about 14 stories tall. Because you couldn't go any higher, as it was next to an airport, and planes would routinely just narrowly miss the tops of buildings.
brilliant.
But yeah, and now it's basically like, you can still kind of almost visit. They've set up like a sort of arcade in Japan based on reconstruction of the...
Oh really? So it's like, so like the arcade is 4 football fields wide and it's sort of like designed around that.
No, the arcade only does about 3 levels of the complex. It's like a very small thing, but it is like a place you can visit and see, like, this is what the Kowloon Walled City look like.
But it's not like a game, it's like the actual arcade is mapped out like it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a place you
Right.
can go visit. And so.
That's quite cool.
And they actually import trash from Hong Kong to make it authentic.
Really?
Yeah.
They import the sewage as well.
They're not literally just taking shit from Hong Kong.
Not the full experience then, is it?
No, I suppose not.
Hong Kong shit smells different.
Yeah, and I guess there's not opium dens and prostitution everywhere, so it's not quite the same, but, you know.
That's the other thing is like, because like we were saying about Britain, like wherever we go, there seems to be a mess. Didn't we start the Opium Wars?
Wow, Hong Kong's founded upon opium, Scott.
Yeah, because it was a port, wasn't it? For
It was a shipping port back in the 1800s. The British, fittingly enough, wanted to get tea from China, and porcelain as well as another thing. So those spices, porcelain, and tea was the main thing. We flooded the market with silver, and China then decided that they had nothing to offer them. So the British thought, well, how do we get into the market now? As they were producing a shit ton of opium over in Bangladesh, one of the other Asian colonies.
It's sort of those things where I was like, because one of the things I was thinking is like, how did they make opium here? Because isn't it like sort of like heroin plant type things? Like they don't grow in Britain. Oh, they took over another country.
But yeah, so basically they just got the Chinese people hooked on opium. They effectively got opium distribution were evident throughout the streets of the Qing dynasty in the 1820s, with opium dens popping up all over the cities, people passing out in the streets, and even dying in the streets due to opium overdoses and addiction. The amount of opium within China rose from virtually none prior to 1790, at 200 chests annually in 1729 to over 4,500 chests annually by the 1800s, when the British started the opium trade within China. And in the 1830s, it reached its all-time high, with in 1838 a total of 40,000 chests of opium being imported, which is when the Chinese government decided no more, so they completely banned the use of opium. And the British were like, well, we still want our money and our tea and that, so which is when the war started.
Oh, right, so the Opium War, because the way you were saying it is like, if I thought like half of this country was hooked on opium, and they just banned opium, there'd be a civil war on their hands. Like, there's no way that people... But it was like, the war was between China and Britain, because China basically destroyed some of our business by getting rid of opium.
No, there was a war between the British and the Chinese because of Britain wanted stuff that China had. China didn't want to sell it, so Britain got a lot of their population addicted to a highly powerful addictive drug and stopped people from being like good hard-working citizens into like passing out in the streets due to too much opium.
That's a very British way of doing it. It's passive-aggressive.
So basically, they were like, you've kind of destroyed our country. Like, and because obviously it's like pretty bad, isn't it? Like, that level of like destruction due to like rampant like drug use across the streets. So the Chinese decided they got 500 workers to get rid of the opium by burning it all, mixing it with limestone and throwing it into rivers.
Those workers got so high. They got the biggest high of their lives. I'm betting.
So there was a big war. There was 19,000 British versus 222,000 Chinese.
All right.
But this war was because where Hong Kong is like an island and an international shipping port, it was very easy for the very powerful British Navy to come around and just continuously bomb and bombard the Chinese into submission, basically. So in 1842, the war started in 1839 and it lasted till 1842, in which they had the Treaty of Nanking. Yeah, I think it's called Nanking. And then after that, they did have a second Opium War, which is when Kowloon got added to Hong Kong. Kowloon.
Oh, is it like a region?
Kowloon's just like an area just outside of Hong Kong, which is where the walled city was.
Right.
So that got added in the second Opium War, and then after that, China and Britain agreed on a 99-year lease of Hong Kong, which that happened in 1898, which is in 1997.
Everything was meant to be handed back.
Everything was handed back, and it was for the most part, and then over 50 years of autonomy before.
Autonomy in air quotes.
Yeah. Right, to finish off, Scott, I'll tell you a light-hearted story about Hong Kong. It's about the...
Oh, we got a sponsor.
We don't have a sponsor.
We have a sponsor. Okay, so we don't actually have a sponsor, but what we do have is a subreddit and a Twitter that I've just set up. So the subreddit is r/robsmap and the Twitter is @robsmap. So if you want to check it out and you've got a spare minute or so, I'll put links in the show notes. Cool. I didn't want to take up too much time with this, so back to Rob, who's going to tell us a happy story about Hong Kong.
So I'll tell you a light-hearted story about Hong Kong.
All right.
A happy one. It's called the Chuang Chao Bun Festival.
Okay.
I hope I pronounced that right, but probably not.
Pronunciation, we're talking about the world.
I like to think I can get some all right.
There are words in the English language that I can't pronounce. I'm not dealing with the other. If I screw up pronouncing...
Screw up pronouncing the word pronouncing.
No. If I screw up pronunciation, then of any country, to be honest, of any language, then I don't care. Like, is every language in the world we'll end up dealing with.
Scott doesn't speak for both of us, and we do care about pronunciation of other people's cultures and languages.
I don't care about pronunciation. Rob can.
So it's a festival held on one of the Hong Kong-owned islands called Chuang Chao. You know, we talked about there's lots of different islands. This is one of them. It's held on the 8th day of the 4th month usually. Well, usually the beginning of May. The festival is to remember when Pak Tai was used to relieve the town of the plague and pirates, and is celebrated to this day for over 100 years. The festival's religious history is largely forgotten, but it's still an evident. It's kind of like how we celebrate various different days here. Kind of don't really celebrate the true religious meaning, but we still sort of follow
Like
it.
how we treat...
Like Pancake Day.
We treat every religious festival as an excuse to eat a lot.
Yeah, and like as this is the Bum Festival, it's kind of like Pancake Day, that kind of same thing. I did say it's held on the 8th day of the 4th month, that's the main day of it, but it goes usually over like a whole week.
So it's just the 8th of April.
No, because it's on the Chinese. Yeah, I should have mentioned this on the Chinese calendar.
Oh, so does Hong Kong use the Chinese calendar?
Yeah, you know, like Chinese New Year and that. Yeah, sorry. So
That must screw
that's why it
everything
changes.
up.
So it's sometimes at the end of May, in April, sometimes beginning of May. So it's like a big old festival, parades and that going through the city and stuff. Then they sell these like steamed buns all over the place. That have a red stamp on them that says peace. On the very last day of the festival at midnight, they have these giant 60-foot like towers made out of bamboo with buns stuck all over them. And like they used to be real buns, like actual food, but now it's health and safety regulations, they're plastic buns. But what you do is you climb up the tower and then you have to collect as many buns as you can, and you get more points for that buns you collect, and the ones at the top are worth more. So it's like a big like competition they do like every year, like who can climb at the top and be like get the most points and that. And they look really cool. They're like these 60-foot like bamboo towers with like these little buns stuck all over them.
So like, surely that's it. Like, is it just everyone go at once, or do they take turns?
There's like usually 3 towers stood there, and you do take turns to go up there and do it.
Okay, because I was going to say...
Almost like rounds.
Sorry?
Like rounds in a tournament sort of thing.
Because I was going to say, like, if they were going to just, like, let's say there's, like, 500 people at this festival, which is, like, low, probably.
Yeah, low. It's a really big festival. Like, people... It's like a tourist attraction as well. People go that when they go there specifically for this festival.
Right. So they take it in turns, because I just had the image in my head of, like, thousands and thousands of people trying to get buns off of a 60-foot tower.
Just absolute mayhem.
Just mayhem. Just like climbing on top of each other, like. But they took it in turns.
Yeah, another interesting thing is that for 3 days during this festival, everyone goes vegetarian.
Oh, so this is even more interesting for you because you're vegetarian.
Yes.
So
everyone goes completely vegetarian. All restaurants and stuff stop selling meat and just sell vegetarian food, including McDonald's. Their menu changes to mushrooms and vegetable burgers and sells no meat for 3 days.
Really?
Yeah, because the thing with it being like there's the specific day, the 8th day of 4th month was significant, is because it's the Buddha's birthday. And this festival just doesn't have anything to do with the Buddha, it just coincides with that. So it's nice for them to do that.
Fair play. Where do you want to talk about next?
I have no idea what's next.
I reckon, because one thing I could think
This was a hell of a one to research. For a first episode, it was not the easiest one.
I reckon we should go for somewhere that is... I know Hong Kong's an island, but somewhere that's like in that region. Should we do China?
No, let's not do China next.
Or what's another Eastern country? You've got your map.
Yeah, I do have my map. Well, it wasn't an Eastern country. There's fucking loads.
Right, what's the closest to bordering Hong Kong? You've got Macau. You've got... What's on the other side of Macau?
You would have like all the Southeast Asian countries, wouldn't you? Places like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos.
Vietnam! That's a apolitical region, isn't it? There's no controversies there.
Why don't we pick somewhere that's a little more relaxed and easier to come by. Like Spain.
Spain. Oh yeah, Gibraltar. Let's talk about that. I reckon we should go. I'll tell you what then. Why don't we go? What's the antipode of Hong Kong? What's on the exact opposite of the world? Australia. Let's go for Australia.
Australia.
Yeah. All right.
Australia's a nice, easy one to do. Yes.
Skip the whole prison colony thing. We've apologised for. At least we've apologised for that one.
That had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it was our ancestors, really, wasn't it? But Australia would be a good one. Although I don't like spiders, so maybe not, because we'll have to look into like nature. How about Portugal?
Portugal's good, yeah.
Let's do. Ooh, how about we just go through the alphabet? So we've done a H. Iceland. Iceland's a good one.
Iceland is a good one, yeah. Iceland or Portugal would be one of them.
Actually, that's a good one because that's also like. Is it Nordic? Is that the word for it?
It's Nordic, yes.
It's Nordic, so there's all like the. And it goes in sort of like. Yeah, I reckon Iceland. Let's do Iceland.
Do Iceland next.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has Britain done anything to ruin Iceland?
No.
Did we? It's Argentina. Not Argentina. We'll skip Argentina for a bit.
But yeah.
Nah, Iceland. Let's do Iceland.
Yeah. I find that's an easier one for me to do as well. I honestly look at Iceland in my spare time because I really want to live there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I want to live in Hong Kong, so.